Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today, Jennifer Rourke, the Perception Facilitator.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
I don't know what happened there. All of a sudden, it just kind of stopped on me, but that's all right. We're back. Hello. Welcome to another episode. And I'm not sure where Sam is today. I think he may be preparing for the Christmas holiday, but Jennifer's with me today. And Jennifer, thank you for being so patient because I got back from my walk and my exercise and so forth. And I got distracted by the cat and I didn't realize what time it was. I took my shower. I was like, oh my God, we're 10 minutes past the hour. Ah!
Well, that's what I said to Maria. I'm like, that's not like Walt. So I actually was like a little concerned, like, where is he? What happened? But yeah, there you are.
I couldn't even get your text because I was taking a shower. I was like, oh, what are you gonna do?
Now
it all worked out. Yeah, that's what it is. Yes. Good. I like that explanation. That's good. I can go with that one. Yeah, that's really good. Now, we have a special guest joining us today, and this is Marie Lesaicherre. And Marie, I'm not even going to try to give you Marie's, potted biography or anything like that. I'm going to let her do all that. What I will say is that she's a PhD, she's an MBA, two different categories where her degrees are from. And she has taken that starting point and gone off in a direction that everybody here on the show is going to love because she went alternative. And I want to hear that story. I know Jennifer does. Jennifer was like quizzing her before we even got started today. Actually, Jennifer should probably do the interview when you really come down to it. But we're going to start off with Marie just telling us about herself. So Marie, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for welcoming me. I'm delighted to be here today. So my name is Marie. I'm originally from France, as you may still hear from the accent. Been around the world quite a bit. Grew up in France and then left when I was 20. Got my PhD in Singapore, work in Asia, work in the US, a little bit of time in Africa, the Middle East, and got back to the US. So I'll give you the veneer, what you see on LinkedIn. So PhD, MBA, climbed the corporate ladder, and then started launching tech businesses. But then 10 years ago, so I grew up in a family in France where everything seemed quite normal in appearance, but there was a lot of trauma. My mother died very quickly when I was very young, and then my brother died, and there was suicide, and a lot of trauma. But I grew up in a family where you lifted the carpet, you pushed everything underneath, put the carpet down, and you pretended nothing ever happened. And for 30 years, I was very good at it. And I got actually a lot of what happened, as the mind often does. And
I always say it's good to have a skill, but maybe not that one.
It helps you for a while, but not for the rest of your life.
Not really, no.
So when I was 30, eventually I went into therapy. Then an accident happened in the family and everything broke loose and everything resurfaced. I realized I suffered from PTSD and I went on a search for solution. Therapy, and so traditional therapies and then alternative therapies, some of them that really interested me. So I got trained in those, eventually got out of the wood and got very frustrated with the lack of affordable solution. And so I developed Akesa, an app that helps people independently without needing a therapist because there is a shortage of therapists right now and some of them are very expensive. So Akesa helps people transform anxiety and distress into resilience on their own.
And say the name of it again very slowly for our non-French speakers so they can really get what it sounds like.
Akesa, Akesa. And the name is actually inspired, I was telling Jennifer, by one Greek god of healing called Akeso.
Oh, very nice. I like that. So I'm not even going to try to do an interview here because Jennifer is just like, she's chomping at the bit. So Jen, take over.
Well, I was first like just really curious because you said it's a download. People can download it onto their phone. So it's literally at your fingertips wherever you go. If you're traveling, you don't need to bring your computer. You just have to have your phone with you, right? And
correct.
It's based off of sound and movement. Is that right?
It is correct. So what we do while searching for therapies, two things really help me. One is called EMDR, movement, desensitization and reprocessing, where therapists will be moving their fingers in front of your eyes while you talk about something that bothered you. At first, I was completely opposed to it. I was like, yeah, this is one of those woohoo thing. And then I did a lot of research, and there is research backing it up. And so EMDR was really transformative for me in helping me heal. And when you move your eyes like this, it decreases the activation of the amygdala, fear center, at the center of the brain, the part of the brain that is responsible for us feeling freaked out and feeling fear. So when we move our eyes, we're able to think about something that was traumatic, a car accident, a very bad argument, a loss, without feeling so much distress. And hence we start processing and we start healing. So this is one thing that is in the app. The other thing is what we call binaural beats, which are sounds at a slightly different frequency on the left and right ear. So we actually can't hear the difference the same way our dogs can hear a lot of sounds. We don't hear, but the brain actually computes, neurons work on electrical connections, actually. So the brain calculates automatically, without us thinking about it, the difference, and then tunes to this difference, and it helps us relax. And so the app guides people to think about distressing experiences and then follow this moving light and listen to different kind of music and guide people to process what has been bothering them without talking, so that we keep the process completely confidential. And because when we talk about something that is distressing, very often it re-triggers us as well.
So if a person's like having, because I used to have anxiety, panic attacks. So let's say I'm about to have a panic attack, or I'm just feeling anxious, right? Do I need to put on a headset for the binaural beats and do the eye movement too at the same time?
Yeah, exactly. The app is tailored right now where it will prompt you. We might remove this actually, because if you don't have the headset, the app will detect it and will tell you you can't move forward. But actually just the light will help you distress. So we are wondering about adjusting this. And so the app has two different kind of session. One is called the resourcing, where you create a safe place. So for me, I pick an image of the beach and I listen to a very specific kind of music that promotes a feeling of safety and peace and joy and a slow moving light. And a couple of minutes of those already calm you down. So if you suffer from anxiety, this is what you would most probably use. And then the other section of the app is more about processing. So identifying, paying attention to what are your beliefs, what do you think when you think about that experience, and then going through multiple cycles of the light in order to change your mindset about the experience.
Wow. So it's when somebody is kind of, I guess, more in the fight or flight, they're in amygdala part of the brain, right? So in a way, I guess, it shifts them back to the neocortex. Is that right? So then it comes back into the...
It doesn't shift you to the neocortex. It relaxes the amygdala. And the app is actually a little bit repetitive on purpose so that you don't so much shift in the prefrontal cortex and start analyzing everything. You stay in a very emotional, relaxed, almost hypnotic state, so that you can let your mind come up with whatever memories are associated with the event and process those. Because very often, if something in the present is bothering us, is because a similar experience in the past was not processed properly by the mind. So I believe that whatever comes to mind, the mind wants you to look at it and eventually process it.
I agree with that. Yeah, huge.
One thing I want to ask one question about the binaural beats, because I've actually experimented a little tiny bit with them. And I'm curious to know if my experience is similar to other people's experience, in that I find when I listen to them, it actually gives me a headache. The difference in frequency, just I start to get tense, and then it just turns into almost like a migraine after a while if I stay with it long enough. So I just gave up. I said, I'm not going this way. But I'm curious, is that something other people experience?
No. And,
okay.
But they are, so about binaural beats. First of all, they are quality binaural beats as well. And so this is important. There are 5 different kinds of binaural beats depending on the brainwave of the brain. So from delta, 0 to 4 hertz, that put you to sleep, to gamma, the very high brainwave. And so it's important to pick the right binaural beats as well.
So maybe I picked the wrong one.
Maybe one of them is very stimulating and kind of cranks you up with energy. And I'm wondering if this is the one you listen to.
It's possible. I honestly don't remember which one it was, but I remember that there are a number of them. And I don't even remember how I selected, to be honest.
I'm glad you brought that up, Walt, because about a year and a half ago, my sister said to me, "Oh, there's this guy online." She told me about his binaural beats. You should go check them out, because I did a lot of programs at the Monroe Institute. I did 12 programs there years ago. They're all based off of the binaural beats. But anyways, so I downloaded, I bought some of his stuff, and Walt, like, I literally for months afterwards was flickering in and out of panic, like whatever it was. Like, I feel like, yeah, it has to be a good quality, like Marie's saying. Like, I never, got headaches or had any kind of experience like that at the Monroe Institute. But you buy some kind of random things you don't really aren't reputable, maybe per se, right? Who knows?
Well, that's hard, though. I mean, let's face it. We're dealing with the internet, and on the internet, everything looks good. It's often very difficult to distinguish. Okay, here's the one that really knows what they're doing. Here's the one you want to stay away from.
Right. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And music is extremely powerful as well. There is something else that comes to mind, which is called solfeggio frequencies, where you tune the music to a different frequency. And for me, when I listen to them, now it's better, but it used to bring me to tears, because it would kind of have this cathartic effect where it would release a lot of emotion. The first time I listened to them, I freaked out.
Yeah, sure.
Like, I'm not going to listen to this. And then I went back to it, and it's, sound, like smell, are extremely powerful to release emotions.
Right. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. What was the name of that again?
Solfeggio, SOLFEGGIOS, solfeggio frequencies.
I haven't heard of that one. Okay. Very
interesting. I was going to say, I agree with you about being in the moment, though. It's anytime I'm working with my clients now, I always say, don't tell me about your past. We don't need to go into all of that. I mean, unless there was some major trauma you want to tell me about now. But otherwise, what's going on today? Because what's going on today is happening because of what's dictating from the past, is overriding you now and polluting the now, right? So it kind of fogs our lenses, and we can't see reality for what it is when the past is overriding us. So I'm so excited about your product. It's smiling ear to ear, because to have something like that at your fingertips too. I mean, everybody has their phone near them, around them, if not always on them. And the fact that that's accessible. And even just when I watched the video from the website, and I'm watching the little dot go back and forth, and then the different backgrounds. I love that. The mountains. I was already peaceful as I'm watching the dot go back and forth. And I love that.
I know people, sometimes I explain it to people and they don't really understand it. And then I show it to them and they're like, oh my God, it works. And I'm like, yes, it works. The science backs it up, but experience it, and it does work. I was very dubious about this moving light, and then 4 years ago, Professor Huberman, a very prominent neuroscientist at Stanford, ran the experiments, and he showed that they actually measure the brain activity. They showed that moving the eyes decreases the amygdala, and then the scientific community was like, okay, now we believe it. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about? I mean, I know you have to be cautious about keeping people's private information private, but can you kind of generically tell us about some of the stories that are involved of people tried this and they had this kind of result after that kind of previous experience, that kind of thing?
So 2 people come to mind. One is a fellow CEO, a woman in Europe, couple of years younger, launching a very stressful business, very promising, but very stressful, raising money, and with a story a little bit like me of abuse. And so, in period of high stress, it comes back, and short of money, very short of time. So absolutely no time for a therapist or anything else. And she would use the app, and within, 5 minutes, she would, she's actually on the website. It's Maya, actually. And so she shared about her experience, and she would experience a stress relief immediately. And she was actually very surprised at the beginning.
Wow.
And then the other person is a fellow London Business School alumni in London, psychiatrist, MBA, who lost someone a year ago out of cancer. And he knows about EMDR. And he used the app, and he knows the science, but most probably he was a little bit skeptical if the app would work as opposed to someone. And then he used it, and when some memories of his past partner came back, and he, it surfaced a lot of difficult emotion, and his stress level went down, and he sent me an email, and I was very surprised. And so coming from a psychiatrist who knows the science behind it and use it, for me, it's a great validation.
Well, you raised a very interesting point there, because you pointed out that he experienced this flow of very difficult emotions, and typically that's why you tend to work with a live therapist or a psychologist or something along that line. So what's the experience with people who are just using an app? They don't have somebody else that they're talking to about it. Is that something that causes issues, or are people generally able to work through it? How does that work out?
So we were very concerned about this at the beginning, and we have a lot of advisors on the business, and so we discussed it. At first we wanted to screen out people who have experienced trauma, who might be, have thoughts of suicide. And so we developed a whole questionnaire to screen out people. And I was told, if people want to fill the questionnaire, they will fill the questionnaire anyway. So we decided instead to put safety mechanisms. So we have tips. We say, if you're experiencing difficult emotion right now, if you're feeling drained and everything, just stay with the first part of the app, which is you pick the safe place and the happy images until you feel better, and come back to the app later. There is no rush. And then we measure the stress level of people as they use the app. So we measure at the beginning and at the end to track efficacies, but throughout the app, we also measure. And so it's very normal as you process something that your stress level would go up a little bit, because very often you uncover something. But if your stress level really goes up, we tell people, hey, your stress level went up quite a bit. So do you want to extend the session so that you stay in there longer? And if people feel overwhelmed, there is a breathing exercise that is called the sigh breathing that is extremely, extremely efficient. So people can stop anytime and just take a few breaths, literally, and come back to it. If they don't feel better, then we reroute them automatically to the sanctuary so that they follow the slow moving light. If they feel well, they are rerouted back to the processing. If they don't feel well, then we offer the option to people at the beginning to enter emergency contact numbers. People, they can call if something doesn't go well. So those numbers show up. If they haven't entered any phone number, then we have emergency phone line, the 988 in the US and all of those for people to call. So that's the approach we've used, is de-escalate the risk if something shows up. Yeah.
When you're detecting this, I'm guessing you do it just by asking, what are you feeling right now? Are you experiencing something along that? Because it's not like they're wired up to the phone, right?
Correct. Yeah. Right now we ask people to self-report stress, and so we have a 0 to 10 scale. In the future, I would love the app to detect, the same way a therapist would read your face, right? They can see if they're asking questions that are too easy and not digging in the past, or if they went too far and they need to let you, process.
The potential is there for that. The technology does know how to read facial characteristics, exactly. So that is possible.
It's one of my dreams that very soon we'll have the app, be a little bit even smaller and be able to tell people, hey, we've detected that you're feeling more distress, and we recommend this. Yeah.
Yeah, that becomes, you would take an app at that point that's already, say, I'm going to be arbitrary about this, say 8 out of 10, you turn it into 11 out of 10 just by adding that little feature in there. Because that's really big to have really be able to detect that.
I have a long list of, long dream list for the apps. This is the beginning.
No, well, that's why I love the fact that you're dreaming that. That's great. You could just as easily settle for what you got, and you're not doing that. So I like that. I approve of that.
The engineering team and I, when I showed them what I wanted at the beginning, they are like, hold on.
Let's get real here. Come on.
Yeah. They made me happy. They said, put everything on paper. We are not forgetting it. It's just for later.
You said you have an IT background, right?
No, I have a scientific background. My background
just scientific. Oh, okay. I have an IT background. That's why I was curious, but okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I'm actually working on a project myself, so I know what it's like to work with the software developers, and I know exactly what you mean. Well, wait, we can't do all that at once. Let's just do this chunk first.
It was like, yeah, we could do it, but you're going to release in 2030, right?
Yeah, right. Sorry,
Marie,
Jennifer, what were you saying?
Oh, when you were saying that, right, when your brain, if something's coming up, if the stress is coming up, it's because your brain wants you to know something, you said. So when you're following the programs that you offer on the app, does it help you to process what's actually happening? Like, do you start psychoanalyzing it, kind of intellectualizing what's happened, like, or does it kind of pull you out of it and away from it?
It asks you to just observe. So you think, let's take an example, right? I had a very bad argument with a friend I care for because I was short of sleep, and so I start with this, and then I think about the argument. I think about where I feel any sensation in my body, the associated emotion, like regret, for example. And then I follow the light for 1 minute, and then a lot of thoughts will come as you follow the light. And you just, the brain thinks really fast, right? And then the light will stop, and then you observe what came up. And it might be an earlier argument with someone else a few years ago. So you just observe. You take a deep breath, you observe it, and then you continue following the light. There's no psychoanalyzing of why and all of this. You just observe, and the brain will process everything. And I believe it's very similar to what happened when we dream, actually. We don't go to bed thinking, oh, tonight I want to dream about this because this is what I would like to process. The mind just pick whatever happened during the day, put a story on top of it, and then processes it, right? And we wake up refreshed, we've released the pain, we've absorbed what we needed to learn from it. So this is why I tell people when they use the app, at first they were like, am I picking the right thought? Did I think about the right thing? And I'm like, there is no right or wrong. Just trust yourself. Yeah.
Which is not easy necessarily to do, by the way. I mean, trusting yourself, that's one of the reasons we get into these issues in the first place, was we don't trust ourselves.
Correct. Mm-hmm. And that's what that's what we say in the app. I added the sentence. I said, whatever comes to mind is the thing your mind wants to look at. There is no right or wrong answer.
So, okay. So I'm understanding it even different, like on another layer. Okay. So I thought you just use the app if you're stressed, like in the moment. But what you're saying is like, no, you can actually go back and alleviate tension from just thinking about a fight, like you were saying, that you had a month ago, just to maybe go into that and see what's under that, and then what's under that, and then what's under that, and kind of observe until you're totally, okay. So now I love it more, because I love to go in and always be doing the work, right? And so it's that, yeah, now I'm extra excited because again, it's like, why wait to experience something stressful in your life? If there are things that happened before, why not resolve them now? Because they can and will catch up to you. And if it's not on a mental and emotional level where you're cognizant of it, it could be downloaded into some sort of diseasement or illness in the body later on, because it wasn't taken care of on the mental level first, which is so cool. I love it.
Correct. Everything will somatize in the body at some point, Yeah.
Yes. Oh, wow.
It's a constant theme around here, how everything starts with a mindset. Everything starts with the thoughts. And I don't care what the topic is. I don't care what the guest is. It's always true, because that's what drives everything. I mean, that's how the whole universe works. But we need the reminder each time, like, oh yeah, the mindset, that really starts this thing, doesn't it? And it's going to be true with the app. The app, to me, it almost doesn't even sound like a therapy app. It sounds like a daily growth app.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the word therapy because it sounds very clinical. I'm still looking, brainstorming with names, but I like this idea of growth. For me, it's more about self-awareness.
Okay.
Than therapy. I like this word growth. Yeah.
Because it sounds
like
like every day it sounds like you're going to experience something a little different, because every day you're feeling something different. Every day you're thinking about something different. Every day something else has come up that didn't come up the other day. I mean, that's just part of our life. And so I don't know what time of day you recommend people use the app. I'm guessing that people probably get the most benefit at the end of the day. But I mean, do you have a recommendation on that?
We don't have recommendation, and we don't say you have to use it that many times a week. We
Mhm.
say the app is there for when you need it. I am also guessing at the end of the day, especially after work, before you go home, or, is the most helpful. Yeah.
Good, because you've been cooking up all this stuff throughout the day, and some of it needs processing.
And you don't want, if you have a family, you don't really want to bring all the stress back to you.
Probably not. No, not a good idea. Yeah. Especially in the holidays. The last thing you need is another political argument around Christmas or something.
But
So,
you know what's really good is the app is great at this time of year because nobody can trigger you into insanity like your family.
That's true.
Like,
yeah. Well, yeah.
It's a stressful time. It's a beautiful time of the year, but it can be a very stressful time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's when it's like the most perfect, because that's when everything is right there in your face and you can actually start to help process it with the use of this app, with the assistance of it. Which another thing I was going to ask you, because my mind is just like going now, is as we're peeling back layers, so to speak, when we're using it and stealing Walt's word here, growth, for the self-growth process, which is what I'd be really most interested in, just delving deeper and deeper into consciousness. But anyways, could this like possibly take us back before this life to maybe memories?
Now we're going to go woo-woo here.
Even memories that are happening on a holographic level. You know what I'm saying? So have you ever had anybody use the app that said, they had a memory that seemed out of this world or lifetime?
We have not yet, but we ran a pilot at the beginning of the year, which was with people working for a big organization. So it was very, talking about work and processing work items. And we just released a couple of weeks ago. So I'm waiting to hear more input. But personally, when I did theta healing and some other modalities, I've had previous life memories come. And so it's, if you let your mind relax, it's highly probable it will bring back. I think it's more a question of, are people open to it, right?
Yes.
And yeah.
I'm going to be your guinea pig, because after this interview, I'm getting the app and I'm getting to my self-growth self-work, and I'm going to see what happens.
Would love to hear your thoughts. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if a few listeners follow your path there, Jennifer. I mean, I don't know for sure. We never know unless somebody decides to write in, but I would not be surprised if at least one or two listeners did the same thing.
Well, even when I went to the Monroe Institute years ago, and like I've had experiences in my life before where I can't explain necessarily, like, was that real in my meditation? Like, is that my mind making that stuff up? I don't know. And it wasn't until I went to the Monroe Institute years ago and I was on one of their programs. I don't know, maybe it was the third or fourth one. And it was all about soul retrieval. And so we would go in to find the souls that are kind of in the in-between stage, I guess, right? Haven't quite made their exit out yet to heaven or whatever you want to call it. And so we would go in to do soul retrieval. Now, in the beginning, you come into the circle, the group that's there before everybody, goes to do the meditations, the group meditations. But we meet in the room, but we don't know each other. I mean, most people don't. Like when I'm at these groups, most people don't know each other. So there's an introduction, but then that's about it. And then the facilitator tells us what meditations we're going to be doing, the instructions to follow. So then we all go to our pods, which are essentially our little beds that we sleep in at night, but you crawl into a little kind of cubby hole and then you lie down. They're very comfortable. It sounds claustrophobic, but it's not. You put on your headset. So like your app, you put on the headset for the binaural beats, because it does stimulate the right and left hemisphere of the brain differently. Anyways, and when I went into this one particular meditation, because so many things had happened to me at this point throughout my life, and I said, whatever's out there or whatever's here, I don't know, but I need to know that this is real. Like going into this meditation, I need proof. Like I literally need proof that I'm not making this up and that what I'm going to experience here is going to be real. And so anyways, then the meditation started, right? The lights go on and then everybody's in their pods at the same time doing the meditation. And immediately my right hand started to swell, which is like stages of out of body experience, right? The energy starts to expand. And then I felt somebody come in and take my hand. that wasn't my hand, and then held my hand, and then boom, I'm catapulted. Like they call the different focus levels there. There are different stages that you're going to energetically, right? That's guided through the meditation. Long story short, okay, I get to this one focus level, and there's a woman there. I'll call her Mary. I don't think that was her real name. anyways, and all of a sudden she's there on the focus level of my meditation. And this is one of the girls that was in the group that I just met in the room. So she's not dead, and we're meeting with the souls that have passed. So I was thinking, what are you doing here? Right? Like, I'm supposed to be meeting the souls who have passed. Anyways, and I went up to her, and I write about this in my book, actually. And so she was showing me the solar system in our hand and telling me how everything's literally at our fingertips. We go on to the next focus level, and then boom, it's a totally different realm. There she is. There's a man on the other side of this realm that I'm in. He has black curly hair, bright green eyes. They go running towards one another in embrace. Tears start shooting out of my face like they're running horizontal. That's how big the emotions were coming out of me. I was just ripped apart by this massive amount of love immediately. Like I felt all their love, both at the same time, ripping through my whole body. They weren't aware of me, but I could see them. Anyways, this experience was so wild. There was all these levels, all these other things that happened. But let me just tell you, when I came out of that meditation, all the other students were supposed to be going on to the next meditation. I pulled my headset off when that particular one was done. I ran to the bathroom, cried, was on the floor. I couldn't stop crying. I put water in my face, and then I went outside. Well, who is walking outside not doing the next meditation but Mary? And I look at her and I said, Mary, did you have a husband that died? And she goes, yes. And I said, did he have black, kind of long, curly hair? She said, yes. And then I said, did he have green eyes? And she started screaming, yes, yes. Oh my God. And then I said, was his name Frank? And we both fell to the floor and started bawling our eyes out. Now, in that experience, he also handed her a letter when I was in the meditation. And when he opened it, all these butterflies flew out. We were in the stage where I guess he's being let go to heaven. But anyways, all these butterflies flew out, and in the letter it said, I love, love, love you, Mary. I've always loved you. So I told her about the letter, and she said, Jennifer, the day before he killed himself, he wrote in the letter, Mary, I love, love, love you. And he mailed it to her, so she got it the next day. Okay, so there was all these things I knew. How would I know about this letter, this hair color, this eye color, the name? There was all these things that were like unexplainable that I just knew. So I really believe in the acceleration of like how binaural beats can shift one's perception from what we think that we're seeing here, which is very limited oftentimes, and then expanding our state of awareness and consciousness to connect with not just the collective around us, but with all realms around us. And that's why, I don't know, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but I just feel, yeah, just one.
It is.
Okay, yeah. But
I mean, that's one heck of a story.
It is. Like, and well, there was so much more to that it would take me too long to talk about. But I mean, so even though I know that's not what you're basing your app off or anything like that, it's just that if anybody that has a desire to want to grow, to have self-awareness, to expand their states of consciousness, like it sounds like an app to me that it's like, this is the seeker and the finder, would buy an app like this because it's about self-growth and self-evolution, and who knows where that can take you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it can take people where they want to go, right? It's if people want to use it to deal with anxiety and day-to-day life, this is one option. If people want to, dig more into their mind and what their mind brings, to the surface, this is another option. So it's a tool that is there for people to use,
That's important too, because what you're basically saying is this is something for you to take charge of your own life with, not to have the app take charge of your life.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And to reflect back on what you were saying, Jennifer, earlier about people being able to use the app anytime they want, it's really something that was important to me. Right now, the I have a lot of respect for therapists and they've helped me tremendously, but the system is based on, the therapist pretty much it's on their schedule, right? So you need to find a slot in their schedule. And very often what happens is people feel a distress, something comes up, whatever, an argument with their spouse or whatever, they book a session, which is usually 3 weeks down the road. They talk to someone, they are feeling better by then. So they're like, do I really want to open up about this? Schedule another one for 2 weeks later. In between, a crisis comes, nobody is available. It's like the model is made, it is not tailored to the user. It's tailored to the provider, unfortunately.
Yeah,
so I really wanted to reverse this and tell people the app is there when you need it,
Not that there are no therapists that don't know how to work so that you're able to be doing your own growth rather than what the system wants you to do. But you're right. Most systems, you're tying into their system. They're not tying into you. And that's a big difference. It's a huge difference.
Yeah. And even therapists who want to be there anytime you have a crisis, they can't physically, right? They have a private life and they have other clients they need to take care of, and it's difficult for them as well. They can't always be on demand, right? And so this is one thing.
Well, some of them try. I mean, I know people who are. I mean, they're just, you call me when you need to call me, and they do, and the people call them, and they just deal with it, and it's okay, But it's not the norm. It's not the way most therapists do.
It's not the norm, unfortunately. No. And the other thing that was important is I really believe that people can self-heal some of the items already. We have a tendency, I think we've deresponsibilized people. We say, you need help, someone will help you, when I believe human beings are a lot more resilient and powerful and have inner wisdom than we think, actually. And so this is something I really wanted to give people the hope that they can take care of themselves for a lot of items already. Yeah.
Well, that raises an interesting question on the flip too. Excuse me, Jennifer. I want to get this in, and then you go. But it raises an interesting flip side of the question, which is if we're going to kind of take this approach of the empowered patient, then the question becomes, how far can that patient go? Where are the limits? Because I mean, there's certain. You already alluded to this earlier. There are certain kinds of situations, conditions that you really do need to have that therapist. So how do they know? I mean, your app ideally guides them, but somebody who wants to know in advance, is this something I should really try? How can they gauge? Is this something that is actually good for me?
So, in the world of trauma, and we covered distress and anxiety, but in the world of trauma, we talk about single trauma, multiple trauma, or complex trauma. So a single or simple trauma is one event, right? So I had a car accident, right? I had one layoff. It's usually the app can help you, except if it's really, really big. The app can help you process this. If you come with 10 years of childhood abuse, you need to talk to someone. It's like you need someone who is skilled, first of all, because it's very old, but it's many years. It's a lot of difference that are, intertwined. And so in that case, you need to talk to someone. But we place the app as a first step or a supplement to therapy. So even people who are in therapy, sometimes they want something in between sessions if something comes up. And so that's where we place the app. But there are a couple of tech companies out there who say, we will replace therapists, and I'm like,
yeah, good luck with that.
you can't ever replace a skilled human being who has empathy as well, and lived experience too. So I don't think we will ever replace a therapist, but we can be a first step to therapy or a supplement in between sessions.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. Well, and especially to people too that can't afford to go to therapists and they don't have benefits. I mean, this is something that they're paying monthly that I think is very inexpensive. Like, this is an amazing deal to get, I mean, and you literally, I know you don't like the word therapy, but you literally have your therapist in your pocket. So, I mean, it does give a lot of people that don't have the finances to do it something to manage with and possibly even really succeed in. transcending all of that lower vibrational energy to higher vibrational energy.
Yes, and we really wanted to make the app affordable, I didn't want it to be free because I believe paying a small amount, it gives you skin in the game, and so it becomes important. But I was told it's scientific back, you could charge a lot more for this, and I was like, no, it goes against the values of the company. So
Well, and there's got to be a give and take. So it's reasonably priced, but of course it has to be priced. You couldn't give it away for free. It's all your work, time, and energy that has gone into this, and many years of, even though you're, like you said, that you were a doctor, right? Like, were you actually practicing and actually going to work, and this was your career. And now you've shifted gears going into a different area, a little more holistic, you could say, right? But all that time and energy and schooling led to where you are now. So, yeah.
The price is not only for the development we've paid for it, but it's mostly because I used to do a lot of coaching, and I realized that when it's free, people take it for granted.
Yeah,
and
sure.
It's when you pay a small amount, and it can be a symbolic $1, then it becomes important and you're involved in the process. And so this is the reason why I wanted people to pay a little bit for it, because then they have skin in the game.
They appreciate it more.
And they are involved in the process as well. They say, I really want this to work. I want to give it a try.
Yes. Yeah.
And if they're taking that approach, they're also taking an approach of self-responsibility. They're saying, I'm going to be responsible for my situation. I'm not going to rely on somebody else. I'm not going to be codependent about it. Say, oh, this person's got to fix my problem. Well, I'm going to solve my problem. Yeah, that's really big. I like that. Got more questions, Jen?
You know what? I mean, I could talk to Marie all day.
Well, that's why I figured, because you were so enthusiastic. I mean, I can jump in here anytime, but I don't want to cut you off. If you want to keep going, feel free.
No, you go ahead, Walt, and then I'm going to jump in with you.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to how this thing got created in the first place. In other words, I know that this was influenced by your own life. You told us about how you had some fairly traumatic stuff going on in your own life. But walk us through that. How did you arrive at doing this app in the first place?
So I believe there are no coincidences in life. And I've launched businesses in my life, and I went to business school. So I've always been thinking about businesses and ideas. I've always been very creative. So I have a lot of ideas all the time. And apps have been at the back of my mind. A few years ago, I wanted to create a social app, but it wasn't good enough. So I trashed it. And so there were seeds of all of this, the idea of the app, the EMDR, the music, everything. And then last year, a lot of different points and events happened at the same time. I used to launch businesses for other people. And because I'm very good at this. And I was talking to a fellow business school person, and he was like, hey, I'm starting to help someone in Europe to launch his business. And he looked at me, and he was really blunt. And he's like, when are you going to stop launching businesses for other people? I never really paid attention, because it's so easy to take the idea from someone and launch it. But he really touched something, sensitive. And so that was that. And then, so I started, having ideas about this app and sketching it out. And my plan a year and a half ago was like, I was in between jobs. And I'm like, I'm going to find a big paying job, and I'm going to work on this during the weekend just for fun until I kind of get my thoughts in order. And then, coincidence, meet a software engineer who had some time, tell him about the idea. He's like, oh, this is so cool. If you give me something, I'll code it for you. I was like, really? He's like, yeah. So I was like, okay. So I started reading, I got the MDR book, the 500-page thing, and read it and started sketching, and he developed it for me. And I was like, okay, now we have a prototype. I called Professor Nayat, Columbia PTSD expert. He agreed to get on the phone. He's like, sure, I get on the phone with you. I said, tell me, am I on track? He's like, yeah, you're on track. We need this. Still have a work to do to develop it. And then everything happened extremely quickly, actually. All the ideas came, a pilot got signed up, I incorporated the business, and then it got started. And I believe that when something is supposed to happen, it does happen. And when something is not supposed to happen, it doesn't happen. So I don't want to sound woohoo, but one of the advisors says it was divine inspiration, that came down, you heard it, and, you give birth to it. So,
well, you said something that I think is really key. You said if it's supposed to happen, it's going to happen. If it's not supposed to happen, it's not going to happen. And the way I take that to mean is if I believe that it was intended to happen, then it's intended to happen. If I believe that there's something going to block it, then there's going to be something that's going to block it. In other words, the belief is actually driving that. And your belief was, yeah, this is going to work. Yeah, everything's going to come into place. Yeah, a developer is going to show up out of nowhere. He's going to make this so easy. You believe that. That belief is so powerful and so potent, but it's the distinguishing characteristic between somebody who gets there and somebody who doesn't get there. And it's so ephemeral. I mean, how do you develop the belief if you don't have the belief? It's one of those kinds of things. But you didn't have any resistance points. You just said, I'm going to go, and it went.
So belief are key, right? I mean, we very often, I put a little caveat, but very often we create our own reality, right?
Absolutely.
With what we believe. But I also believe in Campbell's, saying that if you follow your bliss, doors open where there were walls only, right? So sometimes there are things that are more aligned with who you are and what you believe in, and so those are also easier. I've in the past I got into jobs that were not aligned with me. Rationally, they seem good.
I know all about that. I'm an expert at that.
And then one day you get the call and you're like, well, sorry, but you're out.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, okay. That happened really fast. And so I think it's a belief, but it's also a feeling in the heart as well, right? It's a deep longing and knowing that this is going to work.
Yeah. That's really great. That's basically taking confidence in yourself and running with it. That's the best way I could think of to describe that. You think that's it, Jen? I mean, to me, that's like, if you have the confidence in yourself, if you have the belief in yourself, it's not even so much running with it, it's letting it happen.
It's letting it unfold.
Letting it unfold. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, and I think it's a confidence in yourself, and it's a confidence in the idea as well.
Yeah.
That it's the right thing to do at the right time. And I was talking earlier this morning with someone about entrepreneurship and why do some entrepreneurs, succeed and overcome a lot of hurdles, and others just, let the ideas die. And I think having a sense of purpose and meaning in what you're doing is really important. And you see people who do it for the money and just the success. And when it becomes hard, they're like, yeah, whatever. But when you know the idea is beneficial and you love it as well, then you keep going at it. Yeah.
I know for myself, and in fact, I'm actually experiencing it right now with a project that I'm working on. My biggest challenge, and it has come back to bite me many times, but my biggest challenge with starting a new venture is that I don't completely trust the process, so I start to micromanage it, which of course is absolutely the worst thing to do. But that doesn't stop me. I'm going to micromanage. I know what has to happen here, so I'm going to make this happen.
I know. When I had a conversation with someone the other day. It's not about the how, it's about the what, right? It's what is it that I want to achieve? And sometimes I said, well, whatever track it takes, it's going to go there. And very often we're like, well, this is the path I want to go. And then it goes this way. And at the end we realize, well, I got to my goals here. Right?
But even there, you were at least willing to allow it to go there, even though you were thinking it was going to go over here. But I would get into a frame of mind that says, no, it has to go over here.
I sound like this now, but trust me, there were a time when I was like, no, this is really the way.
Oh, okay.
I am extremely stubborn. I've learned over the years.
I know the feeling, yeah. And it can get in the way, and it throws you for a loop every time. I mean, honestly, that's how I ended up doing the podcast, because I used to do that regularly. I ended up, and I've told the story many times, so I won't go into it, but my business crashed with 2008, and it crashed in part because I was trying to make things happen constantly. And I didn't know that. I didn't realize that's what the problem was, but that's what was going on. And it took starting this podcast about 4 years after the 2008 crisis, because I was desperate and didn't know what else to do. That's what it took for me to finally look at stuff and listen to other people and learn how I had been undermining myself without realizing it, without
Yeah, and
knowing I
with
was
one
doing
of
it.
the advisors is very spiritual. We use this word efforting, which is not really
Yeah,
English.
right. But it's a good word. I like it anyway.
It's like sometimes she's like, "You're trying too hard, just let it happen."
Mhm.
And I'm like, "Yeah, but when you're a control freaks and you're stressed out, you want to work on it, right? Waiting for it to happen is so difficult. But sometimes it's just what you need to do. It's happening, right? It's like,
So it kind of makes me wonder. Now, this goes back to the app. I'm kind of taking a long circuitous route here, but um, I'm wondering, does the app help somebody who has that kind of that micromanaging, I got to make it happen this way mindset to shift away from it?
well, the app is designed for you to follow what it's telling you, right? So you follow
Mhm.
1 minute of moving light and then you observe, right? So you're guided to let your mind retake control of the process, right? And let it tell you what it wants to tell you. Yeah.
I
I'm not
know,
sure it answers my question, but that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought about this
Yeah.
much, but it's interesting because you're bringing up a good point because the first session, the peaceful one is very short. It's just a couple of minutes. And then after when you go into the processing, it's about 10 minutes plus. And one of the advisor, only one, but was like, you need an exit button, right? It's like people are not going to stay in there. And I'm like, no, for two reasons. One is because when you start processing, you don't want people to say, this is difficult. I'm just going to drop the app and go for a walk. And they are all troubled and all of this. So I said, no. She was like, but people have a short attention span. And I'm like, well, they need to learn.
True. It's absolutely true. I
And
agree
so
with
we
that.
say at the beginning, it's going to take 10 minutes. Please hang in there. If you don't have the time, come back later. But I'm like, the more we let people get out of things, then the more they get used to it. And then when it becomes hard, they get out. So the app is designed, and nobody except this advisor, nobody has complained about being stuck in there for 10 minutes,
So it is 10 minutes. Each one is 10 minutes. It goes 10 minutes, or it can go longer, or
It can go longer if you decide to extend. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. But the minimum is 10 minutes.
Correct. Yeah, about 10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is that's really strong because I mean you alluded to it a moment ago, but people do have short attention spans, and the main reason they have short attention spans is because they maintain having short attention spans. They don't practice having a long span.
Exactly,
I mean,
and we make
this
it
is
easy
good.
to escape everything, and
Yeah.
it is just 10 minutes. Some people go meditate for a week, right?
Yeah, you go to the Vipassanas where it's literally a week shutdown meditation. Yeah.
Well,
I know. And
Tim-
with the pandemic, I go on my little tangent, but some people were like, I haven't traveled for a year. I'm like, some people, Pema Chodron, once went on 3-year meditation retreat. I'm like, the pandemic has just been a huge meditation,
and by the same token, there's some people, 10 minutes is like an eternity, just because they have totally bought into the idea. I'm just going to go with whatever is the loudest, clearest, brightest flashing light or sound or whatever is grabbing my attention at that moment. And asking some people to hold their attention for 10 seconds, let alone 10 minutes, is a challenge at times. But I love it. I mean, yeah, I get what the advisors were saying, but I love the fact that you're kind of pushing very gently, but you're kind of pushing the person using the app to say, come on, you can do this. Just stay with it a little bit.
Well, it's a muscle, right? It's you train the mind. Yeah.
We get really good at looking ahead, and there's nothing wrong with planning and looking ahead. That makes a very great business mind. But it's also about expanding our state of consciousness in the moment of the planning, so that we don't have the lazy excuse to say, where did all the time go? Because we were so busy not being present with this moment and everything that it's entailing, even if it's planning something later. And then that just flies by because we're too fixated or even captivated on the mirage of seeing ourselves somewhere where we're not yet, right? Yeah.
In fact, I can even.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I can even imagine that, taking it a step further, it can actually get to the point where somebody who does have this tendency to do what you're describing, who does have this tendency to, they're constantly driving, they're constantly trying to, maneuver and drive the bus and so forth. And now the app, or any process, but really in this case, the app is encouraging them to just sit back, pay attention, observe. And through that activity, they learn to let up on the gas pedal a little bit so they're not constantly frantically going. And then they end up in a really interesting space that they're not familiar with. I have nothing to do. What do I do now? I have nothing. I'm always supposed to be on the go. What do I do now? That's a
Well,
really interesting space for somebody who's in that experience.
and
I
they
know.
get to process the moment.
Yeah, we need to. Then we get to live life, right? Instead
Yeah.
instead of crossing a to-do list. But I used to, before the trauma resurfaced, I could sense it was coming, and my coping mechanism was to run, right, and fill my life with overactivity, because it's a good way to avoid thinking about what is bothering you. And it's, on one hand, it's a safer escape than drinking and some other things, but it's still an escape from facing reality. And so I understand it happens. I've been there before.
Sorry, Jen, we stepped all over you. What were you trying to say there?
Well, even too, it's like just more about expanding into the moment. Like, we don't want to feel. I don't want to feel this right now, so I'm going to go distract myself. Like, people come to my yoga classes and they're like, oh, I just, I want to get out of my head. I go, well, then you're in the wrong class. I want you to get into your head and then move your way through it while you're here. And I feel like that's what the app and allows people, from what I'm gathering, to do, is actually experience and process the moment, so that you're no longer trying to run from the past, because when you run, it overrides you and runs you. And so you can't actually experience the moment because you're literally running from the past. And I feel like that's why so many people are exhausted and have adrenal fatigue and have hormonal issues, because they're literally running away from feeling what's happening in the moment. And if we can't feel what's happening in the moment, we can never rewrite our past. And we can always rewrite the past now if we experience what is happening now in this moment. I do have a method in my book. I call it the SIT method, for see it through, it being the negatively charged belief. And once we feel it through, it's no longer in charge of us. It's no longer dictating who we are, because now we've actually allowed ourselves to feel it fully. And so it's no longer terrifying. We've shattered the veil of fear. We've taken it from a negative charge to a neutral charge. Now we get to expand into the moment and be a part of the moment and be free, essentially feel free.
But it's, it's hard, right? If you have experienced a lot of pain, I think at some point we become afraid of the fear and we become afraid of the pain, right? And 100%. So we keep running and we feel this thing behind us. And so where I hope the app would work is, with the kind of the specific music and the light movement, you're able to face those fears and those pains without feeling overwhelmed by them, and so what we explain at the beginning of the pain is that running away, doesn't solve the problem, right? What we resist persists. And by leaning gently and compassionately into what has been bothering us and the pain, eventually we can start processing it. But it has to be gradual, it has to be compassionate, and it has to be with something that tones down the pain, right? Otherwise it comes back flooding you, and then you hurt yourself, and then you just want to run away even more.
Yeah. No, I agree. I was having panic attacks daily for 10 months. And I'm not kidding. When I say panic attacks, I don't mean having little anxiety bouts or high anxiety. I mean, on the floor thinking I was going to die from morning till night, waking up like that after my dog died, because I was so connected to my dog. And it was literally like it sent my body into a state of constant fight or flight. That's when actually the SIT method was born. And then I finished writing the book. I needed actually that piece, but it would have been so valuable to me to have that app then, because I mean, it was good because it took me to where it did with the book, but that is essentially like how you're saying, it gradually takes people in it easily. Like if I would have had that app, I was in a constant panic. Like I was thinking like, I'm dying every second. When you have a panic attack, you literally think you're dying. Like all I would hear is alarm, 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 alarm. It was like, that's what I was hearing in my body. Like, you're going to die. It's just, it's crazy. So to go into that kind of state of, and that was all grief shock that did that to my body, right? It just sent it completely over the edge.
And people who suffer from PTSD, you know, many years ago when the flashbacks started coming back of abuses, I was living in Maui, on Maui at the time. I mean, in this little house, you know, super safe. People, the neighbors were not even locking their doors, for God's sake, you know, of their multi-million-dollar houses. And I woke up, I remember the first night, you know, completely panicked, not knowing where I was, because you're in the dream, right? I mean, it's not a dream. You're in the flashback and you don't know where you are. And at some point, one morning, I couldn't even get myself out of the house. And I'm like, oh, you can climb mountains. You can go to Africa alone. You can't even get out of your house, right? And so it's when the fears, you know, take over, it's like nothing rational works anymore. You know, it's like you really need, and I wish same thing, that at the time I had something, you know?
Yeah, because it's like having a medication without the medication. It just slowly starts to calm you down.
Without the side effects, hopefully, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. Really good. And without 6 months of withdrawal too. That's a good thing.
Yes.
This has been fascinating, Marie. Before we part company, we got to get some information from you. First of all, somebody who wants the app, how do they find it?
So they can find it on the website or on the App Store. So the best is to go to the website, www.Akesa Health, AKESA Health.com. There is the link right now. It's only App Store, iOS. Next year, very soon, it's going to be available on Android. So if you're on Android, drop me a line, sign up for the mailing list to be updated of when it's getting released. So this is to get the app. And if people want to get in touch, they can email marie@akesahealth.com, or they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm a little bit on Twitter and Facebook, but not so often, especially these days. Other topic. But the best way is to email me, find me on LinkedIn, and
Will you say your email slowly?
Sure. Marie, MARIE, @Akesa Health, AKESA Health, in one word, .com.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. And we'll make sure we'll include a link to the app on the website too, so that'll make it easier for people to find you.
Yeah.
And then as Jennifer knows, I have one more thing I have to do because like so many people who come onto the show, you're a giver who has given so many different ways. And there are people who've never met you, they've never seen you, or I'm sorry, you've never met them, you've never seen them, but they've seen you, they've heard you, they've read something, you know, they picked up some information and it helped them. And you never hear about that, but you need to, because you're giving all this great stuff to people that you'll never see and you'll never meet. So I like to make it a practice to say on their behalf, thank you for what you've been doing and what you're continuing to do.
Thank you. Thank you for both of you for having me. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed my time.
Thank you.
We definitely enjoyed it too.
Yeah.
And Jennifer, despite the fact that I was walking all over you, thank you for doing the interview. You did a great job.
I saw
carry on for hours, you know, like quite a pot of tea and say, let's take the whole afternoon.
Yeah, this is my favorite interview so far, Marie. I am so I'm really grateful. Thank you.
My ego is going to grow big.
That's a good thing. We like that.
Yeah, so good.
Then I won't recognize you anymore.
Just remember to follow your bliss. You'll be good. So, Marie, thank you very much. Jennifer, as usual, wonderful job. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.